This video of the being from Virginia, however long it may be, would be almost definitely smoking gun evidence. He's gone to a lot of great lengths to try and get a hold of this. And then you've got to imagine, if the video is genuine and does exist, whoever's got it potentially does fear for their life. The second video is again involving James Fox, is that Chuck Clark footage. I know Logan Paul has obviously seen it because he went with James Fox to view it, which is really frustrating because Logan Paul filmed it with a button camera and has then never released that footage. Hi everyone, and welcome back to That UFO podcast. As always, my name is Andy, and joining me for a breakdown and look at some events that happened on the 20th of January in Washington, D.C. at the Press Club, along with James Fox and others, I've got a prolific user of social media, and X in particular, cameraman, researcher extraordinaire, and generally all-round good guy, Joe Murgia. Joe, welcome back.
Hey, Andy. Good to be here. Great to be here. Thanks for having me again.
Awesome. No, thanks for coming back on, Joe. It's been a while. And for anyone unfamiliar with who Joe Murgia is, if they're a user of X or social media, they're probably going to know you and subscribe to your posts. You know, Joe has over nearly 100,000 followers at this point. But like Joe just said before we hit record, only 50 people see his posts. He's in a fight with the algorithm at the moment, folks. So good time to remind you to like, subscribe and comment on the video below. If you're listening, leave a review. But listen, Joe, for anyone unsure or unfamiliar with your work, you know, who's Joe Murgia? Why are you involved in the UFO topic?
So I guess the first UFO event in my life was going to see Close Encounters of the Third Kind in the theater. I was 12. It was 1977 or 78. And I loved it. I loved that movie. But, and there was another show that was on television called In Search of with Leonard Nimoy, which covered UFOs, everything paranormal, Bigfoot. I loved that too. But when you're 12 years old, 13, 14, you don't know. And back then there was no internet, so you don't know that you can actually read up on this stuff. I never thought about it. And so I just stayed interested until 96 when I stumbled upon Whitley Strieber's Communion. I read it. I stopped reading it because I didn't realize it was some scary story about abductions. And I just put the book down. Woke up that night, paralyzed on my couch, couldn't move. First time I ever experienced that. Some people say that's the aliens paralyzing you. Other people say it's sleep paralysis. Whatever, it scared me. But I got out of it. The next day, I'm like, you know what? Maybe that's a sign I should keep reading that book. So I read it. I loved it. And that was it. I started reading book after book after book. Eventually started my own email newsletter, which was paranormal and UFOs, and also some politics. That was 90s, late 90s, 2000. Went back to work in television at Maury Povich in New York, which is a horror story, which I won't share. But and then later on, reading books. There was really not much going on compared to what's going now. It's just night and day. People don't realize. People complain and say there's really nothing new. If you wanted to see nothing new back in the 2000s and before, there were UFO conferences. There were books coming out. An interview here or there, a talk show would cover the topic, sensationalized, but they would cover it. And then 2016 started hearing rumblings, or early 2017, and then the New York Times article came out. I was on Twitter a little before that. I mean, I was on way before that, but I started using it for UFOs around then, and I just started going then. So that's basically who I am. And I started out with woo. I wasn't nuts and bolts. The very beginning was really, really a lot of paranormal, a lot of channeled books, which back then I believed everything I read. I had no filter. I had no discernment. So over the years, it's been almost 30 years now. So you develop that along the way. And so here I am now, and I'm obsessed with the topic. It's hard for me to break away.
Yeah, and do you know what? I am completely on board. Now, I was born in 1986. I'll be 40 in March. So clearly not been around this topic as long as you have. But I can completely empathise with the idea that folks who say there's nothing new going on, there's no news this week or this month, or it's been months since we had new Whistleblower or someone's book coming out. Like going back to the 2000s, it was the same VHSs being released with the same cases. I would always go into newsagents and see like magazines, and it'd either be the sensational kind of World Weekly News, Bat Boy found in cave, or you would get some paranormal UFO magazines, but there wasn't this constant flow and stream and interest that we have now. A lot of that down to social media. However, 2017 in that respect changed the game with that New York Times article. And since then, I think if people really take a step back and look at this from a bird's eye view, so much has happened, so much is going on. And like you say, I think for those that remember the 90s and 2000s and the same stuff, it wasn't like this, you know. I mean, and fair play for pioneering the old email newsletter stuff back in the day. Salute you for that one. I was an early adopter of AOL and the chat rooms. I won a sticker album on the Nickelodeon chat room back in the day. And funny looking back at how happily I was to give out my name and address as a young child over the internet to get a free sticker album. And nowadays, I would be horrified if my kids done that. But listen, yeah, Joe, lots to talk about. You've been on in the past. We've done a show around the Wilson Davis memo. You've done a lot of work on that. You've talked about that in the past. May come up in the body of this show, but I think that's one people should go back and definitely check out. However, huge event happened as we record this yesterday in Washington, D.C. at the Press Club on January 20th, hosted by James Fox. And it largely was an event focused on the legacy program, the crash retrieval program, the recovery of biologics or alien bodies, let's call a spade, all in your wheelhouse, especially that legacy program crash retrieval aspect of this topic. What was your take now, say 24 hours on the event that happened yesterday in DC?
I watched it again right before this, and there, I mean, it's, I don't know if there was anything really new that was said for people who have watched the documentary, who have followed the story, but it's still impressive to see people in person sharing their stories or people explaining what they experienced via video. Some of the witnesses couldn't make it in because of visa problems. Um, and the one person who came upon the crash scene, he says he came upon the crash scene, I think Marco, I don't know his last name, and he started
Carlos de Souza.
Carlos,
Yeah.
Carlos, not Marco. He said that, you know, he started telling a story and then he started crying. So you felt bad for the guy. And it's like that kind of emotion is really powerful to see. And you had the neurologist, Italo, grabbing his arm, trying to comfort him. So, yeah, I mean, to me, I think the case happened. But before yesterday happened, I'm like, to really take it to the next level, we need that alleged video that supposedly exists. And if you listen to James Fox, and I love what James has done, you think it might be coming out soon. Leslie Kane has mentioned it, but to 2022, we heard the same type of thing, and I was getting excited. I'm like, oh my God, it sounds like the video is about to come out. They found it, and it's like 4 years later, we still don't have it. So witnesses were great. Um, the neurologist, Italo, he did not talk about his telepathic communication that he has spoken about
Yep.
before. Probably that was probably on purpose. They didn't want to go too far off, you know, into that world. So he's talking about the being. He's like, you know, he seemed more intelligent than us, which I'm really not sure how you can get that from looking at the
Yeah.
being. He said he was looking around the room. Um, but overall, it was really good. But for me, I loved, and this is kind of, and I love the woo. Like I said, I first got into that. I love paranormal. I love mediums, all of that stuff. But I also love the congressional aspect. And Kirk McConnell, who was a senior staffer for Congress in various intelligence committees for 37 years, he's been involved in this since 2017. I remember Kevin Day, who was part of the Tic Tac incident. I remember him sending us a letter from Kirk McConnell, like, who is this McConnell guy? So he was interested back in 2017. He spoke, he gave some really, really, to me, important information. He talked about how Rubio and other senators have spoken to witnesses who talked about interaction with non-humans, crash retrievals, bodies, and we had never really heard, from what I remember, we have never heard what Rubio was exposed to. Um, But then he goes on to add, McConnell's like, but it's not a lot. It's not enough for Congress. They need more firsthand witnesses. And in an interview that McConnell did with Jesse Michaels a few years ago, it might have been last year, he said it's not a lot. Firsthand witnesses who worked in the program, we don't have a lot of them. And McConnell also said, he said, in his view, and I know he has gotten legal advice from other people who work with him, in his view, people can come forward and share what they know despite whatever NDAs, non-disclosure agreements they have signed, as long as they're speaking to Congress in a secure location, a skiff, they can spill their guts. Because Eric Davis said in James Fox's movie, he said, I'll tell Congress everything I know as long as President Trump waives my NDAs. But McConnell's like, he doesn't need to do that. He could do it right now. Those NDAs are not going to hold up. I totally am confident that if he came in, nobody's going to prosecute him, and if they tried, they would really have a difficult time showing that it's hurting national security. So that was my takeaway from yesterday. I transcribed everything McConnell said because I think it's important. And so that was the highlight. And I know Varginha was the focus, but for me, it was McConnell and then Burleson at the end. And before I forget, Andy, we talked about it. Anybody out there listening, if you remember when Burleson first started getting into this, he said, unless I'm delusional, which is possible, but I'm pretty sure he said that if he ever received information or proof that we're dealing with aliens, he would speak about it and risk going to prison. I need to find that. I'm pretty sure I transcribed it. So if anybody else remembers that, let us know, please. But yeah, that's my take. And I don't think Varginha is going anywhere else unless we get the video or we get the autopsy. They talked about exhuming the gentleman in the army who encountered the being and then got sick and died. And some infection that they can't explain. He should not have died. They want to exhume him, get some tissue samples and do some testing. That would help. I don't know what the testing would show. For all we know, if they had the being and did a DNA test, it could come back as human, even though it's not human. I mean, we don't know what we're dealing with. So, yeah, that's my take on yesterday.
Yeah, some good points there. The exhuming of the body is massive for me. And if you can give me a shocked face for the thumbnail, and I'll put exhuming alien body as part of that. But I think that could be huge, and I think it's obviously a very. You've got to be respectful in that conversation. You're talking about a young man who died here 30 years ago. But I presume, given his sister's involvement with this, she provided testimony. She was one of the witnesses whose visa was denied. She lost her brother in 1996 after this event, allegedly scratched by the being when trying to apprehend him. Like you say, he gets this infection that was aggressive. There are a lot of folks pointing to the idea this is likely or potentially a non-human, disease. That biology is really interesting. At the Sol Foundation event, Jacques Vallée had a talk, Joe. I don't know if it's even online yet, but I'll be fair, it was pretty dry. It was quite a long case that in totality, in my opinion, I'll have to say that it wasn't the most interesting UFO case necessarily in terms of the event. It was quite standard. However, it did involve a craft being quite low down or landed in a forest area. And Jacques has the bark from the tree. And he said he's had this now for 40 years, 50 years in this box. And he says he's kept it because it would have absorbed and been changed molecularly by, and I hope I'm getting this right, the radiation at the time. And that's something, if studied, could show new evidence for that event that happened 50 years ago, because they didn't have the technology at the time to study it and analyse it appropriately. On stage, Gary Nolan joked, but being serious at the same time, that he's trying to get the bark from Jacques because he can do the testing, but the bark would have to be destroyed. So I think Jacques in the position of, I've had this 50 years and, imagine getting a really old comic book appraised and being really worried about someone handling it. Gary Nolan's like, we can test this now, but the bark's gone afterwards. So I think Jacques fighting with that a little bit, it sounded like. But to say that, it sounds like there are cases like this that we're now going back 30, 40, 50 years that potentially we can revisit with new technologies, new methods of study, new analysis, and find information. And for me, that exhuming of the body, again, fully with permission from all the family, could yield some really interesting results. Or, like you say, it might come back and say there's not enough to test. Or I don't know. They must have done their homework on this at this point to know that whatever's left has something left over of the body. But that I thought that was a pretty interesting approach, and it definitely doesn't sound like James is leaving this alone. He's going back to Brazil in the coming days to follow this up, and obviously the anniversary is happening over there. The video, though, like you say, and this is the most frustrating thing for me because there's two videos I think many of us would love to see. This video of the being from Virginia, however long it may be, would be almost definitely smoking gun evidence. I know James, and speaking to him on the interview and afterwards, and he wasn't telling me anything, secret here, but he's gone to a lot of great lengths to try and get a hold of this. But I think some of the issue is he's getting contacted by folks in Brazil who are like, yeah, I've got the video, or I can get you the video. So that reward for the video is $100,000. Can you send me the money now? And he's like, I'm not sending you 100,000. Quite rightly, I'm not sending you $100,000 to then come out and you're not there. You get robbed. It's a fake. It's a scam. Whatever it might be. He's going to want a kind of escrow, isn't he? And I'll give you the money, but I want the tape. And so it's a really convoluted and difficult process. And then you've got to imagine if the video is genuine and does exist, whoever's got it potentially does fear for their life and having it and is worried about releasing the video. The second video, by the way, is again involving James Fox, is that Chuck Clark footage that's often talked about from back in the 90s. You've never seen that video, have you, Joe?
No, but I've tweeted about it a lot, and yeah,
I,
James, I
I would
don't. Did you?
love to see that. I know Logan Paul has obviously seen it because he went with James
Yeah,
Fox to view it, which is really frustrating because Logan Paul filmed it with a button camera and has then never released that
yeah.
footage.
Supposedly Chuck Clark threatened to sue him if he put it out, which I don't know if you could really.
How would that work? I've got a video of an alien spacecraft that is from a VHS back in the 90s that two guys filmed and dropped off one night anonymously. And if you release this online, I'll sue you.
Yeah, I
Where's
don't know.
where's the copyright? Where's the trademark? And I appreciate Chuck's stance, but like you say, I don't get how you could be sued for that. And if he's just going to sit on the video, which is now degraded to an extent, we know it's been a long time. I would love to see those videos, but yeah, the video would be huge. I think in this case, one thing that really stood out to me in a negative way was the lack of mainstream media presence, Joe. Um, I I was first off really frustrated that there was no press club feed for the event. I don't like sitting watching these events with commentary of individuals down the side of the camera talking over it as it happens. I'm not a millennial. I'm not 18 years. No offense to anyone older who likes that, but I like to watch the event and listen to the speakers and take that in. And then if I want to go back separately and listen to commentary reviews, awesome. Give me that. Give me that option. Um, but
When I,
for
when I, when
me,
I cover when I cover those events, I'm gonna say see you later, full screen.
yeah,
I'm not gonna sit on the screen for an hour and try to jump in, which I know some people like that, and you want to comment during a break. That's fine. I also, yeah, a friend of mine asked me. She goes, "What do you think? Who do you think's gonna cover this?" I'm like, News Nation and nobody. It's ridiculous that they don't cover this story, especially with McConnell up there. Even if you want, like, oh, Virginia's too much for me, but you got McConnell. Let me just say one more thing because I want to make it clear, which I did not in my tweet that I did for McConnell. I want whistleblowers to come forward. They're not going to be prosecuted according to McConnell, but they also have other issues with intimidation, losing their pension, losing their job, losing their security clearance. All of those things are used against them. I would never, ever say, you need to come forward now. Like people were saying to Lou early on, just take one for the team and just say everything everything. This is too important. No, I'm never going to tell anybody to say that. That's such a personal decision. So I just want to make sure that was out of the way. Also, I'm not blaming James for not getting the video. I know it's would be the most difficult thing in the world to acquire. I'm just telling people, just lower your expectations. That's all. It's really difficult. I don't expect us to get it anytime soon. If we do, then we can get really excited at that time.
on that lack of mainstream exposure, I'm under the impression that that might not be completely the end of that, and that there might be something coming in terms of that. I don't know what it is, and that sounds really vague and, mysterious. I just think there might be some kind of mainstream follow up either in the pipeline already, or we're going to hear more from it. But a couple of people messaged me to say, yeah, it's not just quite as straightforward as no mainstream coverage. So
2022, I thought there was, and I looked at some of my old tweets. There was talk about a New York Times article on Virginia, which never happened. Maybe we'll get something like that. I don't know.
is that the article that you ruined?
No, that was. We could talk about that too. That was 2020, I think.
Is that, yeah, I was going to say that sounded a little bit early. I mean,
You know,
maybe even after that, because I started this podcast in 2020, and I remember getting you on because, I mean, let's do the long story short, because I think we did speak about this before, Joe, and it was a few years back. Essentially, the New York Times article 2017 dropped. There was long rumoured to be this big follow up coming, a year or so later, we'll just say. It was rumoured it was going to heavily focus on the crash retrieval aspect of this, maybe some big bombshell statements, given it was the same journalists involved. Um, Yourself, Joe, you were quite prominent about speaking about it online. And was it Ralph Blumenthal who was quite vocal about people like yourself speaking about it too much online causes these things to not get put through the editor's desk? Ultimately, it doesn't help. Was that kind of what happened?
Ralph was one. Leslie wasn't happy. And back then, I remember you asked me, would you do anything different? I'm like, no. But, that was 5, 6 years ago. Would I do things differently looking back now? Yeah, I would have. I would have done things differently. One of the people I talked with was supposed to be part of that article. They were interviewed, I believe, by Leslie. And then that person asked me, and you can figure out who it is. I just don't want to say, but that person said, you know what? Leslie interviewed me too. Can you hold off on posting your blog until the New York Times article came out? And I said no. And they're like, okay, I understand. Um, I would probably do that differently. Um, and yeah, I was out of control hyping that thing and talking about it too much. And and I understand where their anger came from, but also in my defense, I had my own sources on that. It's like I did my own work on that. So it wasn't like I was stealing anything from them. But, like George Knapp, and I'm not comparing myself to George Knapp, but George Knapp was asked to take a seat back for 2017, and he's like, "Yeah, all right, I have the story, but it's the New York Times."
Yeah.
I probably should have done the same thing and just held off and just waited to see what they had, because
It's
maybe
like,
if I ruined any part of that article, I feel bad.
yeah, it's a good example though, Joe, of, when people say about, and you've been quite, when you mentioned before about people saying Lou Elizondo should just come forward, spill all the beans, and to hell with it, take the jail time or whatever might happen. And you're quite right to say you wouldn't ask anyone to ever do that. But this whole thing about people should burn their sources, there is an element of, like you did, so we don't know for sure, but if the rumours are true and that article was going to be filled with revelations about the crash retrieval program, the legacy program, maybe it would name Clapper, Glenn Gaffney, like Knapp did in the hearings. Maybe it would name big names in this kind of huge media conglomerate. That could have been quite big, but you come out and say this is what's going to happen, or other folks done that as well. It then doesn't. It's either Joe was lying, Joe was making it up, or Joe caused it to not come out. So we don't know if that was going to be in there in the first place, if it wasn't going to be in there. And I think that's why sometimes it's best just to take a seat back and go, let's see what happens. I think it seems to be a little bit better online these days for people posting a lot of teases and I know something's coming down the pipeline. Maybe people are a little bit better at holding their water and this kind of stuff. Because you just end up, I hear things sometimes and I could put out breaking news, I've heard this, but you know what? You can just end up looking silly if it doesn't come out. And that could be, do you know what? 100% the story I break was totally true. You put it out there and actually it doesn't happen because of any number of reasons. And it just makes you look, and you just have to defend yourself, don't you? And be like, well, I heard this, and people think you're doing it for clicks and stuff. So it's a really difficult water to navigate. I mentioned this the other week when I found Lou Elizondo's book online. I wasn't the first person to know that Lou Elizondo was writing a new book. Others knew, but I found it on the publisher's website when I was looking for Stratton's book, and I want to get your thoughts on that. And I messaged Lou Elizondo to ask, do you mind if I share this online? Because it's public knowledge anyway now. Someone else is going to find it. And he was like, yeah, sure, go for it. So I didn't have to do that. I could have just popped out there. And I know people said he will have appreciated that or whatever. But I just think there's sometimes a little bit of courtesy goes a long way in these things to say, do you mind if I share this? And yeah, but fair play to you for saying that you might do things or you would do things a little bit differently now. Hopefully we get that chance again. I want to ask you a little bit of a sidebar then. So McConnell's statements were really interesting, and he's talking about getting round NDAs, not even having to get round them, just the fact that come out and talk, they can't prosecute you, or they won't prosecute you, or you'll get protection. It's going to take a really brave person to be the one to test that water, isn't it? Because it's again like, seeing a sign that says shark infested waters on the beach, but someone saying, I promise you, Joe, there's no sharks in that water. Do you want to be the first guy that puts your foot in to check? That's what we kind of need to happen here. Can you actually see that happening though?
But we did have, and he's not somebody who worked in a program, as James Fox says, using the wrench to bend metal. But Dylan Borland came forward without going to Dobster. He did not get anything cleared, spoke to the people behind the scenes, and then he went and did interviews and then did his congressional testimony, and nobody had approved anything he was going to say. Now, and then we have Matthew Brown, right?
Matthew Brown, yeah.
Mind. Matthew Brown, sorry, Matthew. He didn't go through regular Dobster. He went through the State Department, kind of a little bit of a workaround, and shared not everything that he knows, but he shared a lot. Now, can I imagine somebody working in the crash retrieval program or somebody who did work in it, like they went to, and when I say that, I say they go to work, they get in through all the security and the craft is there and they're trying to work on the propulsion system every day for a few years, or they did work on the bodies, autopsy, analyzing tissue, that kind of stuff. We're talking about those kind of witnesses. Can I imagining it happening? I mean, everything I hear publicly and behind the scenes is no. But, will it happen in our lifetimes? Maybe your lifetime, maybe. Mine, I'm not so sure. But that's what we need. And whether or not that takes us to the next level, that's a big thing, because I've had people behind the scenes say, this is coming out, and they won't be specific, but this is really going to get things going. And then it comes out and it doesn't get things going because the media has still ignored it and the masses just are paying attention to other things. So those people mean well when they tell me stuff, but you cannot control how people are going to react. You cannot control how the media is going to react. I don't know if the media has a muzzle on it somewhere, or it's just they don't want to admit that they've been wrong about this for 80 years.
I'll tell you why this is getting zero coverage. Well, a big reason for it in the UK mainstream or any press today is because of, I don't know if you've seen, the Beckham's son has come out in a social media post to say that his mum was a really really bad mother, and that she was selfish when it came to his wedding, and this is like blown up in the UK as like the only thing that most people are talking about. I am staying well clear. I could not give two flying saucers as to this story about Brooklyn Beckham's wedding and his mother not designing the dress for the fiance, and literally this is everywhere. It's all the memes, it's on all the X accounts, it's the mainstream, the broadsheet, everyone's covering it. And here's this event that happened yesterday. One thing that I wonder if this would help, I saw this conversation on a few platforms, including the podcast Discord, so thanks to the folks in there, had a really good chat yesterday during the live stream. People were suggesting that maybe one way forward for this is, and this would be interesting to get your opinion, drop the technology side of the conversation at that senior political level, because if they're really stonewalling the technology as being the national security risk, if, Trump's come out and just said there, Joe, we've got, I'll do my Trump because people quite like it. We've got these secret weapons. We've got the best weapons. No one else has got the weapons we have. We can make them disappear. So Trump's telling us all how they've got these amazing weapons, right? And I'm sure they do. I'm even forgetting the NHI side of things. I bet the US has got some fucking incredible technology that would blow our minds as to what it can do. But if you forget the tech and just go down the route of, we don't care about the saucers, the anti-gravity, whatever you might have, the bodies, that's not national security. So have you got non-human bodies, non-human remains, non-human biologics? And can you see there potentially being some kind of fruit in that respect, that Congress, the UAP caucus, whoever it might be, start to go down the route of, we're not talking about the craft, we're not talking about the crash retrieval programs, we just want to know about, are we alone or not?
And I can make an argument, or somebody would probably possibly make an argument. Well, the bodies have some sort of there's some sort of shielding on the bodies, and we can use that on the battlefield. We don't want to give that up to our
And
adversaries. So,
Independence Day style, the exoskeleton the things have, and
yes. But yeah, that's worth a shot, unless the reason for the secrecy isn't just technology. I mean, I still don't know if it's just the technology or it's the fact that we're not alone and they're afraid if there'll be some societal collapse if people learn we're not alone and these beings have been here for a long time and they've had a hand in somehow manipulating how society has progressed over the years. But I don't know if they're only concerned with technology, and then if they're only concerned, the gatekeepers and other people are concerned with the technology getting out, then yeah, that could work. Focus on the bodies, focus on what type of beings we've seen with bodies. Worth a shot. Definitely worth a shot.
there's the argument as well around, maybe there is still a national security risk, maybe not in terms of our enemies getting a hold of weaponry and using it against us. And there's the argument that if the US, China, or Russia, if one of those have one tic tac, then they could put a nuclear weapon over any point of the other's nation within seconds, and there would be no time to do anything about it. So you would win. That would be the superpower. You've won. Um, so that makes me think that is not the case. Or they've all got these really cool craft. It's looking less and less like Russia have any of these things, let's be fair. And if anyone was going to have it, it's the US and China at this point. Although,
When you
I don't
say
know.
don't have, you mean a craft, or don't have not reverse engineered whatever they have?
So, so they either don't have like these tic tac or triangles. The triangles are always the conversation, aren't they? Around these are the reverse engineered, potentially human hybrid or human NHI joint operations. So either they don't have any of these things, or they both have them. Because surely, if the US had one of these craft and China didn't, that's game over. Because you just have to show the right people in China, look what we have, and you don't. So sit the fuck down. Um, and no offense, but looking at the administration right now, and the fact that the American political system seems to be losing a lot of friends across all its allies at the minute. Um, it's a bit of an odd situation to think that any of these nations do have that level of technology. What do you think the US, for example, has in its arsenal? Do you think they've got triangles?
It's a great question. We can talk about that because it's really confusing and it's controversial. I mean, Eric Davis had talked about being, he didn't say, he said he had access to some of the Soviet, I don't know if it was files, photos, but basically they had a tic tac. He talked about that in Age of Disclosure. Didn't say how much progress they had made as far as reverse engineering, but as far as what we have, Eric Davis has come out and said, we've not made any progress. The program was shut down in 89. It'll be started up again when they think we've had enough advancement with physics and materials. Then there are other people like Will Miller, who I interviewed back in 2020, 20-ish, He's like, oh, in my opinion, we have a full Russia and China have their craft, but we have a full operational craft that can go anywhere, anytime in the universe. All right. Okay. That's the opposite of Eric. Then you have Lukatsky. This is the controversial, and it's not talked about more. Lukatsky is asked by Jeremy Corbell. They're talking about reverse engineering. And he goes, Jeremy's like, what kind of success have we had with that? And Lukatsky, who was so scared about, not scared, but he's more very concerned about our adversaries learning anything, so he won't say anything that's not approved by Dopser. Then Jeremy asks him that question, and he goes, well, we haven't had reverse engineering success to the full extent. I'm like, this is somebody who doesn't talk about this stuff, and now he's telling the world that we have reverse engineered what we have, just not to the full extent. That's a pretty big if that's true, that's a really big revelation. What extent? 60%, 70%? I mean, if that's true, we have craft that could do amazing things. As far as whether or not, like you said, I don't know if we would use it publicly unless we actually had to, because people make the argument, well, if we had it, you would see it. We wouldn't have to fight wars anymore. It depends on if the technology is world changing, economy changing. They may hold it back. But privately, maybe they would show China and say, like you said, this is what we have. Don't try anything. So it's controversial and confusing. I don't know who to believe. You got Eric, Will Miller, and you got Lukatsky. Three different opinions on what we have done as far as reverse engineering. I don't know what your thoughts are on that.
Yeah, I think across the topic, it's difficult to think, are some of these folks lying purposely, or are they telling the truth as they believe it, or is it the case that they're actually all telling an element of the truth, and they're just exposed to different things? And I found this especially over the last 18 months, that there's more of a split across the folks involved in this topic who are public around how they think it should go forward. And obviously they all know different things, but I think there's involved, even just from a military point of view, where some of them want this all to come out, some of them don't want this all to come out. And I think that includes, well, I would say I know that includes figures who are sitting there publicly and would appear to be like disclosure champions, or at least are happy to appear in the documentaries, but they're only looking for certain aspects of the topic to get public exposure. Other aspects, they are fully behind keeping it behind closed doors. So I think there's a real spread, and you're right, it's difficult to work out sometimes who's telling the truth, and people can be disappointed in that, can't they? That, oh, well, Eric Davis says we haven't had this success. Well, maybe as far as he's aware, we haven't. Maybe we have. I struggle to think that the US have a fleet of triangles that a very, very small aspect of the military or a private contractor are in control of. You know, Tom DeLonge secret machine style, that they can go up and they test fly them around. Maybe to your point, they can access the craft. And again, I love using Independence Day. There was this idea that they could get inside the craft, they could work on it, but it didn't turn on until the aliens come to Earth, you know, so they've got very limited success. Then they can start using certain things. So it's a really, really strange aspect to this conversation, because then again, we won't even go into it now because it's too big and I'd have to prepare better for it. But okay, so is it one species? Is it multiple species? Do they all have different craft? Do they have the same craft? Do some of them not need craft? Are the craft all craft? Do some of the craft just appear, but they're actually non-physical and they're just here as a viewing port? You go into somewhere else and it appears in the sky here. Any number of weird scenarios like that. But yeah, it's a bit of a strange one. I can't remember the question I was going to follow up with on that. But in terms of
Yep.
those names, yeah, go on.
The one thing in in the age of disclosure documentary, which I mean, yeah, I have issues with some of it, especially not talking about OSAP. But I've watched it 4 times. I've recommended it to other people who like it. They're not UFO people. I think it was really, really well done. There's a part where Senator Mike Rounds says, let's face it, if and I don't know that how do you pronounce the head of China,
Xi
the head of
Jinping.
China, yeah, or if he or Putin had this technology, they would use it to get to world domination. So my mind, he goes, if they thought that we didn't have it and they did, then they would stop at nothing to achieve their ends of world domination. So right away, I think, okay, if we don't have it and they know that, we need to lie about it and make them think that we have it and make them think that we have reverse engineered this stuff so they don't try to attack us, assuming they have been successful in their reverse engineering. So I do consider when I hear something from somebody, especially if they work in intelligence, they may be lying to me. I consider that with everybody. I don't, people think I just believe things, just because so and so is saying it. No, I don't. I mean, I look at what they're saying. I try to find out if anybody else is saying the same. It's really hard to confirm things. It's really hard. When I see, that's a word I used to use. I don't use it anymore. So and so said this. That confirms it. Now, it doesn't really confirm it. It's just another person saying the same thing. For us to confirm that we have a non-human craft, you and I need to go to the vault. We need to see it with our own eyes and then show us the bodies, show us the results of the tissue samples, everything. I don't know. I have a big problem with the word believe versus know. I believe we're alone. I believe we're not alone on this planet. I believe that there's a non-human intelligence here. I don't know it. I mean, I don't know what it would take. I guess that scenario I just said, that would show me that yes, I know 100%. And maybe I'm nitpicking with words. I don't know. Other people would say, "Come on, you believe you know it's the same thing." And now I'm rambling.
No, I get that. I want to talk about you mentioning some of those folks at the top of the chain at the moment. Lou Elizondo has a new book coming out. So you mentioned before about Lou, quite right not to come forward and spill the beans and get involved. And he wrote Imminent, that came out. Um, New York Times bestseller. Done really well. Currently in the UK, not number one in the UFO charts. My book is. Thank you, folks, for buying it. That was my
It
shameless
is.
plug. Yeah, and on
That's
Amazon.
awesome. That's
It's,
awesome.
it's doing well in the niche charts, folks. So thank you for picking up, and it's on a very, very good offer till the end of the month as
I
well.
will buy it today.
Oh, cheers, Joe. It's not on quite as good an offer in the US, but it's still like 20% off. But yeah,
Okay.
over my shoulder, Atlas of Unidentified Flying Objects, folks. But thank you. But yeah, Lou's book done incredibly well. Sold massive amounts of copies around the world. He's writing a new book, Reckoning. I'm really surprised this is coming out before Stratton's book. And the point is, I found Lou's book on the HarperCollins site when I've been looking almost daily. I've got alerts set up for when Stratton's book gets put online, and it's still not there. Are you surprised Lou has a second book coming out before Stratton's? And what do you
Surprised.
think Lou's going to talk about in a second book?
I'm surprised Lou has a second book coming out at all. I had no idea he was working on a second book. I have no idea what he's going to talk about. Um, as far as timing on Stratton, I don't know. Dan Farrer, who's involved with Stratton's book, he was involved with Lou's book. On Rogan, he said that he expects Jay Stratton's book, to come out in the spring, also along with that other book about the guy who was in a program and forgot in memory. Remember that Scott?
Yeah, yep.
That other book, which Lou said is going to be I think he said bombshell, our favorite word. Maybe not. I have no idea what Lou is going to talk about. I really don't. I mean, I'd be totally guessing. Uh, Curious to see what he has to say. And the criticism is going to be, why didn't you? If there's something really, really important, why wasn't that included in the first book? I'm really looking forward to reading Jay's book. For people who don't know, he was involved with OSAP back right before OSAP, 2006, 2007. We would not, Andy, I'm pretty confident we would not be talking here right now if George Knapp was not born. Because Knapp and Kelleher hunt for the Skinwalker. Jay Stratton took that to Iraq. Lakatsky read it. That's what got them interested in the topic and Skinwalker Ranch. Lakatsky went to the ranch, had his experience. OSAP was formed. So I really, really am looking forward to hearing from the guy who created ATIP, he said in 2015, and was the head of the UAP task force, and the guy that brought David Grush into the UAP task force to go looking for the crash retrieval program, which he took 4 years, Grush did, to investigate. You have any idea what Lou is going to write about?
Well, what's interesting is, so this is what I said, the blurb for the book was on the publisher's website. So this is what was there. It is no longer there. If you go onto Amazon or you go into HarperCollins, it just has Untitled, the new novel by unknown author, and it's got the unsale and the price. They've even
It says
removed
novel.
it. They've changed it. They've removed all the details that were there previously, and it's no longer up on Amazon. Um, so they've removed everything, but this is on Elizondo's page because I've got it saved. So it's just the price and the on sale date. And product details have changed. It's in society and social sciences. Yeah, so they removed all detail, but I've still got saved what I wrote back in January. So it was titled Reckoning the Unspoken Truth About UFOs and the Urgency of Now. And this is what the blurb said. A former Pentagon insider reveals the hidden truth about UFOs and why humanity can no longer afford to look away. For decades, governments have concealed the truth about unidentified anomalous phenomena, or UAPs, but now the silence is cracking and the consequences of secrecy are becoming impossible to ignore. In Reckoning, Luis Elizondo, former head of the Pentagon's secretive UFO program, delivers an urgent wake-up call. UAPs are real, the evidence is undeniable, and our future depends on how we respond. Drawing on previously undisclosed evidence, let's talk about that, global history and groundbreaking science, Elizondo reveals why this is not just about strange lights in the sky, it's about technology, security, faith, and the very identity of humankind. This is the pivotal moment. Will we evolve into a species ready to face the truth, or retreat into denial and risk catastrophe? None of that is available online anymore.
Jeez.
But that is what was on the publisher's site and Amazon. I'll have a quick round. But yeah, what's your take on that?
I don't know. I mean, we've heard so many rumors and ideas about 2027 and all that stuff, what's coming, and even Lou kind of hinted at that stuff, which I'm really skeptical about. Maybe it's going to be some of that. I mean, I don't know. I mean, is there any way? I thought you said the word novel somewhere. Was that
It's
word used?
not in the initial stuff. It's there now as Untitled, the new novel. So I think they've just put like a placeholder in. But it was mentioned that it's changed into like science fiction now as a category. But again, I don't know if we should read too much into that. I think they've just moved it, given if because of when I reported it and everyone when it went out online, they've taken it down. I really don't know. It's going out in a good time though because it's on pre-order 2 weeks before the Steven Spielberg movie comes out, and then goes on sale late August. So, yeah, good time of year for it if indeed all that information still goes out. But that line about what was it? Drawing on previously undisclosed evidence. So is that going to be all the talk that happened after Lou's book was written? Maybe guys like Grush coming out and the stories that have happened since then? Or is that hinting at Lou's going to be talking about undisclosed evidence? Because I think that would upset some people.
Yeah. Yeah, it would definitely upset people. Why didn't you talk about that in your congressional hearing testimony? I guess we'll wait to see. Has there been any rumors about when?
Yeah, I've got the exact dates it had. Pre-order 29th of May. Goes on sale
Okay.
late August 2026. I think it was like the 27th it was due.
Okay.
Um, but yeah,
The reason I really, not to change the subject, I just don't know anything else to say about Lou's book. Well, I guess we'll have to wait until August. I really, really want to see how Jay handles the talk about the end of OSAP, Kona Blue, if he talks about it, and then ATIP. There's such a gap, and people get mad when I bring it up. It's like, listen, everybody I've ever spoken to, except maybe one person who didn't say anything bad about Lou. They just didn't say anything. Um, they've all said Lou played a really important role in 2017, going forward with Congress, doing his media interviews. But if Jay Stratton is saying he created ATIP in 2015, and Lou is saying he headed up ATIP in 2009, 2010, what the hell was Lou doing in 2009 and 2010? He wasn't part of OSAP. He has said that. I have said publicly, I've heard that Lou did one small thing for OSAP early on, but he was not part of the program. So what was Lou doing from 2009 to 2015? And people also told me, no, he was not the director of ATIP. I don't think there really was a director of ATIP.
no. Can I
I'm
give you
sure
my
Lou.
understanding, and you can
Yeah, go
tell me
ahead.
what you think based off the back of this, okay? So my understanding was you had OSAP. They wanted to make that an official SAP, special access project, get the funding. I'm guessing that involves a lot more benefits and all that kind of stuff and access to things. When that was declined, around that time, or just before it was declined, Lou was brought on board for a position, whatever that might have been. But he wasn't in charge of it. He was just brought in. Once things were basically, we're not going to be able to go ahead with this, the group kind of disbanded a little bit, and ATIP carried on with Lou running that. Give him whatever title you want, but he then carried that on because the other guys were like, OSAP's gone, it's done, and we're not getting what we wanted in terms of this being an official project. It's going to carry on as ATIP. Lou ran with that, and so he was in charge of that, but that was, I don't know, can you say less official, however you want to spin it, but it still carried on as like a kind of non-official project, but still doing very real work. And that's where that crossover for me is particularly interesting as to, is it a little bit like you had the Beatles and they decide to split up just as they hire a new band member, and that new band member carries on as the Beatles, but John and Ringo aren't there anymore. Is that what happened? And again, this is speculation because we don't know. And obviously, this is one of the things, Joe. I love your take on this. Age of Disclosure was filmed over 3 years. One of the things people pointed out was Lou and Jay Stratton sitting next to each other. So it was like, oh, that's good news.
Yeah.
But in the last 18 months, there has been a lot of talk online, and it's not even rumour because it was online. Well, that not to say that everything you read online, folks, is true. But there was stuff online that Stratton and family, I believe his wife, were unhappy at some of Lou's positioning of himself around this. That was out there. Folks were talking about it. And that's when a lot of folks are like, let's see what Stratton says in his book. Is it going to shoot down some of Lou's position? Is it going to water down what Lou done? Is it going to show that Lou embellished things? And again, this is all just speculation that folks are suggesting. Or will it vindicate, no, actually, Lou done this, 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 and this? Now, I say Age of Disclosure was filmed over 3 years. They may have been sitting side by side before Lou's book came out, and they're not together after that. We don't know because we're not given in the corner like a timestamp to say filmed July 2022, filmed August 2024. There's every chance that happens because Age of Disclosure, however you want to look at it, comes across as a Lou Elizondo vehicle. He heads up you know, he heads up the program literally. He heads up Age of Disclosure as the narrator, as the host almost. And I know that got a lot of people talking, so that was interesting for me. I would hope, honestly, I don't want to see Jay Stratton's book come out and slander Lou or talk down about any work Lou Elizondo done. I hope it vindicates this was Lou Elizondo's position. This is the work he done. It'll hopefully clear up a few things that we don't have right now. But I think this goes back to your point about Miller, Davis, and Lakatsky. You know, are we wanting to find out one of those guys is lying, one's telling the truth, one was being lied to, or are we going to find out it's not that easy? This is far more complex than we're led to believe, and we just don't have all the puzzle pieces.
Yeah, that may be, and I'm trying to figure out. That's why and people are like, we're dealing with the non-human intelligence. Why don't you focus on that instead of the other stuff? Because I want the accuracy. I want to know exactly what went on back then. And I don't think no, I know Jay a little bit, Stratton. Spent a little time with him in Alabama and then in California. I don't think he's gonna slam Lou. That's not his style. There's no way. I just think he'll tell it as it happened, assuming nothing gets changed, after he gets through Dopser, because Farah is involved in the book. So I'm sure whatever disagreements Lou and Jay have, Farah is well. I'm sure Farah is well aware of it. I hope he doesn't get Jay to take anything out of his book that's already approved. And I'm really, beside that, I'm really looking forward to Jay talking about the UAP task force and Grush and all of that. How much is Stratton going to say about the crash retrieval program? The movie Lou does a really, really good job in that movie. His communication skills, even though when he first came out, he's like, I was in the shadows. I don't want to do this. Well, his communication skills are top
He is
notch.
media trained now. Like
Yeah,
he is very media trained. Yeah.
he's really good. And I showed the documentary to somebody that knows some of the issues that I have brought up with Lou. And that person, it's my ex-wife. I showed it to her. I'm like, you got to sit down. You got to watch. All right, I'll watch. And she sat through it and she liked it. She goes, I go, what out of 1 to 10? What do you think? She's like, a 7, because it's really well done. It really takes us through from 2017 up until now. I can't believe, just flashing back to yesterday, Burleson is still talking about the UAP Disclosure Act. They're going to try for a 4th time this year. Maybe it happens. And then another thing that, just so I don't forget, McConnell did say, and we mentioned it, Trump could just put out a tweet and say, if you are part of a classified program, if you're part of a special access program and sign an NDA, that does not mean you cannot go to Congress. You can go to Congress right now. You don't need me to waive your NDA. Yeah, if Trump did that, that would help. I don't think everybody would just automatically do it, but it would help. Is Trump going to do that? Probably not. Unless you say, President Trump, if you tweet that out, we'll give you Greenland.
Well, as we speak, Trump has said he's not going to invade, but he's also, I believe, said you either come to the negotiating table or we'll remember that, whatever that means. So, veiled threat to your friends there, folks. You know,
Maybe that's where the UFO underground, the giant football field size UFO is under Greenland. That's why he wants Greenland.
now we're talking. There's the thumbnail, folks. Shocked faces, UFO under Greenland. That's the one. Joe Murgia confirms. But yeah, I made a note there. You mentioned, and it's probably a good place to wrap up on the chat around the event itself from yesterday. Burleson closed out with remarks around that UAP Disclosure Act and whistleblower protections. I think what we're likely to see is, rather than a 4th attempt at the Disclosure Act going through the NDAA, which it has and failed, I know Danny Sheehan would argue small elements of it have gone through, but the big stuff hasn't, and it's largely like a shell of what it could be or should be. It looks like he's going to try and get them through as standalone bills. I just wonder how difficult is that going to be right now when there's a lot of shit on the plate of politicians in the United States, and then you've got to be the guy to walk around going, I know we're probably going to invade the UK in the coming months, and I know we've just nuked France. But you know, let's try and protect UFO whistleblowers coming out to speak about aliens. And you can imagine, like, seriously, Eric, come on, man, not right now. And
Yeah.
this is the thing that I said last year and you know many of the same accounts I do, Joe, and no offense to them, but when they're constantly banging on about the toothpaste out the tube now, you can't put the genie back in the bottle, this is it, disclosure walls are breaking down. And then there's always something that can come up that'll distract the public or take people's attention away. Things that cause groceries to be more expensive in supermarkets, the cost of fuel to fill up your car being more expensive. This is shit that affects people here and now today. And if I then try and speak to my wife, well, I say, you know, our rent's gone up £100 a month and the shop has gone up from £800 a month to £1,000 a month. Oh, do you want to sit down and watch this really interesting documentary about US politicians speaking about potential alien life? She'd be like, not fucking particularly, no, and not for 15 or 20 quid that it's going to cost us to watch it. There's that kind of very real separation in what's actually affecting people now, and I think that goes up the food chain to people at the very top as well. And it is still that thing of, realistically, Joe, unless the Epstein stuff comes back rolling down that hill towards people in power, then maybe the alien stuff's used as a distraction at that point. I don't know. Do you think that could happen, or are we seeing that it's easy enough to bat this stuff away over and over again?
Yeah, I think they'll keep batting it away. I don't think he would use the UFO stuff as a distraction. I hope I'm wrong, with all of this stuff. And I see the same tweets you see. Disclosure is imminent. No, it isn't. I mean, I hope I wake up tomorrow and I can go on Twitter and say, oh my God, I was wrong. I'm an idiot. Obviously, who cares what I thought? We have disclosure. It's not going to happen. I mean, and I don't even know what would, what would constitute disclosure right now. Firsthand witnesses coming forward, like three people having a press conference saying we worked in a program for 3 years. We worked on craft. This is why we believe they're non-human in origin. Would that do it? It all depends on what it depends on what the media coverage is. If
For
the
the
media
public,
cover,
Joe, nah, for the public, at this point, I think it's got to be bodies or craft. Or a Phoenix Lights in 2026. Like a proper over LA, New York, London, whatever, Glasgow, why not? Over a major city with lots of camera phones, something undeniable. I mean, broad daylight would be great, but I think something like that would get people talking at least. And I think you'd have enough people now that they couldn't just explain it away as flares. So that, I think, for me is what the public needs. Again, if you could get a video of an alien being in a hospital in 1996, I said earlier that would be smoking gun. Would it? Still, I mean,
the
it's
AI, it's
it's
tough.
AI, it's fake, it's just computer. Yeah, that's not what it is. It's something else. Everyone would argue. And do you know what? To be fair, if you pulled a flying saucer onto the White House lawn, I think you would have people go, "Yeah, what are they trying to distract us from now? Yeah, good try." You could literally have the alien beings walk down the ramp, and folks wouldn't believe it.
Yeah, people are really cynical. It's really a problem right now. If we had more of the videos that we had released in 2017, but they're longer and they're clearly anomalous maneuvers by whatever craft, at least we can get people saying if they can get by the AI aspect. And
That's
we have
pretty weird.
well, if we have the provenance, yeah, provenance, and we have the pilots, yeah, we could at least get people saying that's anomalous technology. Whether it's aliens or our advanced technology, this could be world changing. That might at least upgrade the conversation and get the
Yeah.
media covering it. Because 2017, we have not seen coverage like that since 2017. We've had little spurts here and there.
Grush. I'll say Grush.
Grush was Grush was okay, but it wasn't 2017. If people ever want to
Can I
look at the art, go
can
ahead.
I argue that though?
Yeah.
There was more coverage of Grush in 2023 than there was of 2017 in the UK.
Jeez. Well, that's good. That's a good thing I did not know.
Much more.
I mean, I do remember I went in to get pizza one day, and the guy goes, "How's it going?" I'm like, "It's going pretty good." I said it was right after Grush had testified. I go, "Did you see that congressional testimony on UFOs today?" And the guy goes, "David Grush." I'm like, "You know David Grush, huh?" Yeah, I think it was just a random
Yeah.
uh, stroke of luck that he knew it, because people in my family and friends, they have no idea who that is. But yeah, I didn't know that. That's great that the UK covered that. Over here, if I need to look at Giuliano Marankovic's, he has a website. OmniTalk Radio is his Twitter. He has almost every article, every media appearance since 2017 up till now. It's incredible work. And I think 2017 was more coverage on Grush. I could be wrong though.
Yeah. One more thing before some listener questions, Joe, if you're good for time still,
Good.
is Skywatcher. It's almost a year since then. I was looking at some stuff today, and I just happened to notice it was almost a year to the day that Jake Barber came out on the show with News Nation with Ross Coulthart. Famously, we saw the video of the egg being previewed and the Barber interview, the 45-minute interview that came out first, and it is literally almost the 1 year anniversary. It was then a couple of months after we hear about Skywatcher, we hear about the claims that they're going to within a year be able to show they're working essentially. I always felt, Joe, that they made some big claims at first and then walked those back. For me, the way I remember it, and you'll appreciate this, memory's a funny thing. It seemed to me as if we can summon these craft in using a dog whistle and psionics, telekinesis, whatever they want to call it. Then when Skywatcher fully came out properly, they kind of walked that back and went, "Yeah, we're going to try and do this. We think we can do it." And it was like, I thought you could do it. I thought you've been doing it. I thought that's what you said. And then it was like, right, anyway, we're now. I asked Jake Barber. I was really fortunate at the Sol conference to get the first question with him in the Q&A, and I said to him, you claimed it was going to be 1 year. that you were going to be able to basically show your working and show that you can summon these things. Are you still able to do that within the year? He basically said, fair question. They're going through all that data. He believed, well, it wouldn't be the 31st of December. He said, he commented it was February or March or April. He actually made that statement. He says it might be like a calendar year, that 365 days, and it may overrun slightly, which is totally fair, but it has gone very quiet on the Skywatcher front. And I just wanted your take on that whole situation.
I mean, he said that they're going to have answers to everything you ever wanted to know about UFOs, but were afraid to ask where they're from, how they work, who they are within 1 year. So we're past that year now. It's not going to happen in February. It's not going to happen in March. If I'm wrong, slam me for it. I don't think that's happening. I remember it the same way. Basically they can bring down a craft, which told us, oh, then they already have brought down craft. This is going to change everything. This will prove that we're not alone, that we're dealing with anomalous technology. Did somebody, I hear whispers, they've been told to shut it down. If that's the case, if certain people in the government told them to shut it down, I guess they're not going to be able to admit that. I've kind of lost, and I was skeptical off the bat when he's like, I saw this egg and right away I knew it was a non-human craft. I'm like, how do you know that? I mean, you didn't see it fly. But based on his other information, that's what his conclusion was. So where we are now with them, I don't know. I mean, I'm definitely disappointed. I never expected them to tell us everything there is to know about UFOs within a year. I never thought that would happen. But I thought we'd have at least a clear video of a craft that we couldn't explain. We don't have that. I mean, I remember when Marek von Rennenkamp was on, he did one of their videos. They put out 2 videos. They never put out the third on psionics. Yeah. And I think it was the second video. America's going through all their type of videos and craft that they're seeing or objects. And one of them, people were like, I think even Mick West jumped in. He goes, those are birds. Other people are like, those are birds. And if you watch the video, nothing about birds came up. And then Marek jumped in and said, during that video interview, I mentioned those could be birds. You might want to bring in, what is the person who studies bird? Ornithologist? I don't know what it is. But he goes, bring in one of those people to look at that video. And then Marek goes, that was cut out of the video. That was a big thing for me. I'm like, you should not be cutting that out. That's really bad. Here's your guy, Marek, interviewing you, saying those might be birds, and you took that out. So I don't have a lot of confidence in them right now. I know Gary Nolan is involved. Gary is a smart guy, so
Yep.
I want to give them more time. It's like we have no choice, but I don't know what to expect from them going forward. I've lost not hope, but I've lost any I don't know. I really don't. It's not really something that comes to mind when I think about UFOs right now. I'm glad you brought it up because I did want to talk about it.
I use Gary Nolan involvement with Skywatcher as the canary in the coal mine, that when he's no longer involved, it's dead, or not worth following. And as far as we're aware, he still is. So just to say, yeah, you're quite right. It was the 1st of August 2025. Skywatcher basically put a thread out to say continuing aggressively collecting data, moving through the process outlined in the discovery framework. It was set up very professionally. They had a full flow in what they wanted to do. And bear in mind, it was the end of October at Sol. Jake Barber and then James Fowler separately both talked about the work, and it was still ongoing. So that was like 8-9 weeks ago, 10 weeks ago. He said, our objective remains the same. Moving forward, we will create a clearer delineation between media releases and formal scientific analysis. Please ignore unsubstantiated claims or gossip, which historically has done this entire space an immense disservice. Part 3 on psionics is completed and going through the appropriate editing and review process. We are confident you will all enjoy it more very soon. That was August 1st. So here we are 5 months later and we still don't have that. We then found out on... we found out on the 18th of August James Fowler had left, and then December was the last time they sent a tweet out on Christmas Eve. Happy holidays to our Skywatcher friends and family. Skywatch was founded slightly over a year ago with the goal of applying disciplined science, advanced sensing, and rigorous analysis to one of the most complex and least understood challenges in aerospace and atmospheric research. We will continue to explore all areas of the scientific frontier and follow the data wherever it leads us in service to humanity and the public, using the best scientific practices available to us. More to come soon. That was
I
it.
I I they have Alex Kokras as an investor.
Mm.
Obviously, he's not going to invest the money. The guy's sharp. There was something that showed him it was worth investing. I hope, I like Jake Barber. I watched all of his interview with Ross. It was 3 hours. He comes across as a good guy, but, proof is in the pudding. And so far, we do not have the pudding. And we'll see what 2026 brings. I hope they can do stuff. I don't think it's a total. I know people are like, it's 100% grift. I don't think that's what that is. I think they were able to do things that convinced them that they were summoning UAP, and they need to back it up with really strong evidence, which we have not gotten yet.
Even one piece of strong evidence, and amongst all that data, if they can show, like you say, one good video, one good photograph, or one incident where they can be like, this is legit. There's something here that would get folks on board with it. But like you say, a little bit like Age of Disclosure came out in a premiere the end of March, early April, and then it's 6 months before you see it. And did it damage it? But ultimately it looks like it didn't. But a lot of folks lost faith in it over that time. So perhaps there's still a redemption arc on that. But listen, let's fly through some listener questions, Joe. If you want,
Just
you got a point?
one
Yeah.
thing on Age of Disclosure. For the longest time, we heard this is it. This is the documentary. This is the game changer. It's not the game changer. It's not. It's really good. It's really important for that information to get out there. Dan Farah is saying these people didn't speak until now because there's strength in numbers, and once they understood they would have other people, they started speaking. Andy, most of those people had already spoken before. Clapper he didn't speak about a program like he did, but Clapper had spoken about UFOs. Eric Davis, we could go down the list. Those people had already spoken before. There are new voices in there. There are new, really interesting things that were said, important things, but the game changer is such a big word. What's changed? I mean, we'll see. We got to give it time to see what happens and how much we can give credit to the Age of Disclosure. Great film, but right now it's not a game changer to me.
And for me, James Fox, The Phenomenon, is still the documentary I'd be showing someone that said, I need to watch a UFO documentary tonight. What one you showing me? I'm not saying Age of Disclosure. I don't know if Age of Disclosure's in my top three, to be honest. So I think I'd still be going Phenomenon first. Age of Disclosure, I'll stick by it. It's too dry as a documentary for the general public, and it's too long. So yeah, just my opinion for what it's worth, folks. But I am not an experienced documentary maker with a #1 documentary on Amazon. So
What a hater!
I know Dan Farah would be laughing in my face. So we'll fly through some listener questions to finish off here, Joe. Thanks to everyone who got involved. Some of those I've baked into the interview already. We've covered. And I have to say, Joe, before we carry on, I did get a lot of folks passing on their well wishes for Cookie, who was your beloved dog who passed away. I didn't want to read them through on every single question. And also your sister, who obviously you've had a bit of a rough year of it, haven't you?
Wait, what happened with my sister?
Oh no, your sister had a stroke.
I don't know.
No. Your sister had a stroke.
Yeah, it wasn't a stroke. It turned out it wasn't. I was like,
oh, good.
Andy's talking to my family now.
No, God, no. Yeah, I don't have my sources.
I
that
appreciate
good.
that. And Cookie, yeah, I went through all the messages. It was difficult that people had sent in April when it happened. So hundreds and hundreds of messages. So thank you to everybody.
So many questions, Joe. Finished off with either a comment about your sister's health or Cookie passing away, and I was like, I'm not going to read that every single time to Joe. That's not.
Thank you.
Not
My
ideal.
sister's good. My sister's good. Thank you for everybody.
Awesome. So that's good to know it wasn't that. So yeah, I could edit that out, folks, but I'm not that professional. But at least we know. There you go, folks that tweet that or sent in those questions to Joe. Thank you. So first off, Chris Walford, who you'll know from online, said, "What are Joe's thoughts on Roswell being 2 crashes versus 1 crash?"
I've never heard 2 crashes. I know people talked about 2 different crash locations, but Lou, in his interview with Ross, said there were two craft, one crashed, the other one crashed and took off again. And then Eric Davis, interviewed by Peter Scoffish of Soul, said, no, there's one crash, and I know there's rumors about a second crash. I don't know where that's coming from. So, unless Lou has information or we're misunderstanding, I only thought it was one craft. One crash in Corona, not Roswell. That's what Eric. He's like, it wasn't Roswell. It was right. It was a little bit away from Roswell. Everybody says Roswell, but it was Corona. Um, Maybe I'm missing something. I wasn't Andy. I wasn't even into crash retrievals and heavily into Roswell until the Wilson Davis stuff came out, because I was like, we're never going to learn about Roswell. And then that came out. I'm like, okay, um, there are people that are so much more knowledgeable about that subject. Is there something I'm missing about the two craft?
I've heard that before, but not from anyone in terms of like depth or detail. Just that, I've heard at Roswell it was two crashes. I'd even heard, and I think it is just that kind of speculation that grows over time, that the craft that crashed was coming to search for another crash that had happened previously, and that was the one that got recovered by the U.S. Army. And again, I think it's just that kind of lore that develops with the passage of time and over the years. As far as I'm aware, from anyone who talks about it in any official capacity or researches it thoroughly, it was one craft that crashed.
And one more thing that happened recently, the Eric Davis interview he did with Peter Scoffish. Eric said, because we're always like, how does Eric know this? And I had put a tweet out that morning where Eric explained back in 2019 how you find out about this stuff. And he went through this long thing in an interview with Alejandro Rojas. So I put out that transcript again, and then the interview dropped with Peter Scoffish. And he's like, one of the big things they had right during the OSAP years, they met. It was Bigelow, Lukatsky, Kelleher. They met with the vice president. Eric didn't say who it was, but it's Jim Ryder. He was the vice president of Lockheed. And he told them, he said to those three, I spent 20 years working on the crash retrieval program with four other people. And then Eric talked to Ryder separately, got the same information. And they were close to getting in when they tried to get OSAP turned into a special access program, and then it was shut down. That was part of what they were trying to do. So they never got to see it. So is it really there? Is that enough? Is that enough? I don't know what Jim Ryder showed or told Bigelow, Hal Puthoff, and Kelleher and Lukatsky. I don't know what he told them. I don't know what he showed them. So, like I said, for me and you, I think you're the same way. To know for sure that we have that, we need to see it. Even those guys haven't seen it. And if they have, they're not saying. So I just wanted to bring that up because that was a really good interview that was done with Eric.
You know what? I also appreciate from that perspective when you put it that way how or why the national security angle comes up so often, and why would any rational person, especially in a position of power or responsibility, if you know you have an alien craft, decide, yeah, let's show it to the public? Because, like you say, immediately, what would stop then? Say the US came out tomorrow and went, look, we do have a craft. We've got one craft. All the stories about nine craft and everything. No, we've got one. We've got one intact craft that we work on. It's in this hangar at Wright Patterson. Let's take the camera crews along. We're going to film it. What's to stop at that point China invading the United States or attempting it and going, do you know what? We have to make a move for this now. Like, we need that technology, or we basically secede as a superpower. Like, you could
Oh,
literally, it could be like almost an indirect declaration of war.
and even if it doesn't go that far, I remember when I interviewed Michael Vai a few times, he's like, as soon as you admit that, your adversaries are going to do everything within their power to find out exactly what you have and try to get the same thing. So I don't know if it would be as far as declaring war on us, but I'm sure that's gone through their minds, the people in charge. And they're like, there's no way we're giving up this secret. There's no benefit. Of course, we know there is a benefit to the world knowing that we're dealing with the non-human intelligence, especially, which we don't have time to talk about, but if that non-human intelligence has interacted with humanity and manipulated our history somehow, either positive or negative, that's pretty important to know, especially if it's still going on now. That's one of the arguments I make. And my friend, my good friend who I showed, he didn't want to watch The Age of Disclosure. But I'm like, why are you not interested? You come here once or twice a year. You never want to talk about this. And he's like, I go, because if this is real, don't you admit it's the biggest thing ever for humanity? He's like, yeah, but it seems like they always get so close to having the proof and then it never happens. So I just don't pay attention.
It's that episode of South Park where you're chasing the magic dragon, which is a drugs euphemism, but you know, you're sitting on there and you've got the stick in front of you and you're always just close to getting it. But I think that's what keeps so many of us in this topic are interested in
Yeah.
it, to be honest, as well. It's always close. But like you said earlier, Joe, you know, if a country, if a superpower finds out there's a base out there or a craft they can go and recover, do they go in and get it? There's always loads of stories over the years about Iraq, Afghanistan, the Middle East, you know, pyramids that are hidden under the ground, craft that have been recovered, technologies that have been recovered, and that's one of the reasons, aside from oil, or that's used as a cover, to go in and get these. Is Greenland a big UFO? Is Greenland the new Skinwalker Ranch? You know, that'll be a couple of years on history. Greenland season one, you know, digging for the UFO. Could be there. Howard asks, what are Joe's thoughts on Vallée's control system theory, and do crashes make this system more likely to be an open than a closed one?
I put out a tweet about his best explanation for the closed versus open system and just a whole explanation for the system idea, where he talked about he thought it was multiple systems. I forget the word he used. And then yesterday, I'm glad that question came up because in Vallée's prepared video, he said it appears to be an extraterrestrial phenomenon empowered by advanced artificial intelligence. And Vallée, that was yesterday. Vallée's known for not, he shies away from saying this is extraterrestrial. He talks about maybe interdimensional from some other reality. For him to say that, I don't know if that's really, has he changed his mind that it's extraterrestrial with, being basically everything's being played out by their artificial intelligence. I don't know. The closed system. He talked about if we're in, and I still always struggle exactly what he means by this, but if he talks about if we're in this closed system, we should be able to do something to change it. Like he uses the example: you're at your home and you change the thermostat. If the temperature doesn't change, then you really have no control. But if it does, you go, okay, so we can do things to change it. And then he also brought up a simulation in that same interview, how he used to be against that idea, but now he's more open to it, partly because of some of the work that Ray Kurzweil has done on the simulation. I'm a big, I have a large interest in the simulation theory, which we definitely don't have time to get into now. I would love to find, and I'm looking for, oh, here it is. Vallée, and I'll retweet it for people watching. I'll read it. This is going to air tomorrow, I think. I'll
Yeah,
retweet
yeah.
it. He's like, I'll just read some quotes. He's like, are we being taken over by a species from somewhere in space that's vastly more intelligent than we are? I was like, oh, I've never seen him say that. Talks about how the simulation was a new concept that he initially rejected, but now he's more open. Is that he goes, if it's a closed system, we're like prisoners and something is going to happen to us. There is very little we can do. And he says, turn the thermostat dial. If the temperature doesn't change, then I know I'm inside of a control system. So we can do the same thing with UFOs, but we have to react. We have to, number one, acknowledge that it exists, and number two, we have to react to it. So let me just a little more because he asked the question. Vallée says, so the question you have to ask about UFOs is, number one, is it a natural or an artificial system, control system? And if it is a control system, is it open or closed? In other words, are we being taken over by a species, which I said, from somewhere in space that's vastly more intelligent? It's a really long explanation, which I won't go through now. It seems like somebody is, that kind of goes to manipulating society. But I don't want to say that it's for a bad reason. I don't know why they would be, quote unquote, they would be doing that. It certainly doesn't appear to be good. Or at least certain aspects of it are not good. As Colin Kelleher said, we were not able to determine intent during the OSAP program, but we could definitely say that interactions with certain UAP are not good for human health because people were getting sick from their interactions. So that's the most important question. You know, the system. What is it doing? What is it trying to tell us? And I don't know if we'll ever get that answer ever, especially if it's negative. Why? If there's something that's using us, and trying to control the way we are for their own selfish purposes, why would they ever tell us if they're continuing to use us? And I know people, that's another thing. Eric probably annoyed people. Eric Davis said, "This is not your Space Brothers. That's not what we're dealing with." He said something about malevolent. I don't know if it's malevolent. It might just be selfish. Self-preservation. I forget who said that. If it's self-preservation, it's kind of like, are we malevolent for eating cows, chickens, pigs? We eat meat.
Yeah.
No, we're not. We're not malevolent. We're just doing it because we use that to survive. We don't really give it a second thought, most of us. But it's not malevolent. We start going down that route. What is evil? And Peter Levender has spoken a lot about that too.
We're answering it already, but James had asked the same question. Both our thoughts on Jacques Vallée and his hypothesis that was talked about yesterday, so we're answering it. And on that, though, it's the equivalent, Joe, of, I mean, you seem like a nice guy. If you go outside your apartment and there's a group of ants on the ground that you don't see and accidentally step on, I think you'd be like, oh, I'd rather not have done that, but it's not going to ruin your day, and you carry on doing what you were doing. Those ants were intelligent. They were doing something. They were building. They were carrying. They were a community. Is that how a species much more intelligent than us would see us? Just they are what they are, and they look at it as a bigger picture, perhaps. And if you zoom out on humanity, if this is some kind of simulation or like a zoo theory type scenario, we're not all the same. And I don't just mean like you've got Americans and Brits or black versus white. I mean like you've got like a Western culture with all these different religions. You've got Amazonian tribes that are as yet haven't contacted civilization as we would call it. You've got people living in extreme poverty. You've got thousands of children every day being macheted to death or gunned down by people in the name of whatever religion they've got or whatever fight they've got going on politically. And do you think a species watching that is thinking this is going well? Or from our point of view, are they running it well if it's something they're in charge of, whatever that looks like? Because I wouldn't say this looks like it's going particularly well. And I don't just mean the way things are in the world right now in the United States, the UK and Europe, and further afield people listen to this. But I just mean look at the human history over the last 500 years or 1,000 years. Is this going well? It doesn't, in the scale of it, really balance out, I think, to a positive experience.
Yeah, and maybe it's possible, and I know a lot of people, and I understand why, a lot of people shy away from this theory, but it's possible that all the problems on this planet are very helpful to them. There's something beneficial to us being at each other's throats,
That the
constant
stuff
wars.
DeLong talked about, like fear being something that can always motivate them. And I know it's a really crude way to think about it, but in Monsters Inc., when they use like humans,
I need to see that.
the screams of kids to power like their city, but then they find out that laughter is 10 times more powerful. Blah blah blah, all that bullshit, right? But the idea that fear can be like a fuel source, DeLong's talked about that on Rogan famously.
Started, I think the first person that I was able to find was Rudolf Steiner in the early 1900s. He talked about how these beings feed off of our fear and negative emotions. And then you have throughout the years various people talking about that. Is that even possible? I mean, the late Bill Bankston wrote about an experiment where they hooked up plants to an I forget how do you say it, the EEG. It's not. I don't know if it was the EEG, but it was,
I
and
know
it
what you
wasn't. I
mean.
don't.
Yeah, a machine that can take readings based off of electronic
Yeah,
signals and
I don't know.
reactions.
And I don't know if it was Cleve Baxter who first did that work with plants, but anyway, they hooked up the plants and they they told the person to put out different emotions, and the plant reacted differently to a neutral emotion, an angry emotion, a happy emotion. So there seems to be something tangible to our emotions. So maybe there's some sort of non-human being that's non-physical that somehow uses that for sustenance. That's the whole soul trap theory simulation. It's created by some people who think that's going on. They're feeding off of us through this simulation that just creates this planet is basically a hellhole. When I say that, people are like, my life is good. I have great things. I'm like, there's some really great things on this planet. But then you mentioned the negative stuff that's gone on is horrific. Some of the things people go through, it's the worst thing ever, you know? Well, it's them learning their lessons. I'm like, we start getting into that. I've had family
Yeah,
members go through hell.
yeah.
So what was your original question?
Yeah, but no, to that point, I think like even that idea of on a day-to-day basis, if you never had it in your life where when things start going wrong, the car breaks down, relationship issues, money's not great, it's one thing after another, and you can get stuck in a cycle, and it's like a self-fulfilling prophecy. It feeds itself. But when things are going well, you get a new job, you get a promotion, your mindset changes, you get a little bit fitter, you come into some money, you meet someone that changes an aspect of your life and it goes in a new direction, you meet new friends and things are looking up. These things, oh, as I've just lost Joe. Yep, there we go. You're back in. I'll just double check. I'll take it that a little second. Did
Those
you hear
were
what?
the reptilians took you out.
Yeah, that'll be it. Yeah. At least it wasn't the poster that fell down. Um, But did you hear what I was saying about when things are going well, when things are
Yeah.
going badly? Yeah. So when things are going well, they keep going well. And is that a fuel? Is that you yourself and your positive mindset? Are you creating that outlook? Are you creating that luck? I think in a movie you're led to believe that the waitress down on her luck, finds a winning lottery ticket and wins $100 million and her whole life changes round. Is it the case that these things happen because you're in a space or of a mindset that you're attracting it? Famously, Noel Edmonds, TV presenter in the UK, I think you know Deal or No Deal. We all know that game show around the world. Noel Edmonds had been out of TV in the UK for something like 10 or 15 years. He was a massive star that no longer had any jobs. No one wanted him. He wasn't famous. You could walk past him in the street and you'd be like, oh, it's Noel Edmonds. He famously talked about how he came up with the idea for Deal or No Deal, and he wrote to the universe like a letter and sent it to the universe to be like, I want to be back on TV. I want to be famous again. I've got this idea. I want to be in the limelight. I want money, success. I want that back. It's his passion to be back in TV. And all of that happened off the back of that. And he strongly believed it was him putting that out there to the universe that allowed him to turn his life around. And I know you can't just walk out tonight and wish upon a shooting star that tomorrow Spotify are going to offer me the new Joe Rogan contract and Andy, we're going to give you $1 million an episode, which would be wonderful if anyone's listening. But there is that element of, I suppose, you make your own luck, good or bad.
Yeah, and I have studied manifesting, the whole idea of, you know, affirmations way back. I mean, affirmation go the first time I was introduced to affirmations, I am healthy, I have a great job, I am this, I am that. It was probably around the first when I first started getting into this. Um, Somebody who is interested in that, who really has a level-headed approach, is Mitch Horowitz, and he has some really great books on that.
I
I've
spoke to
attended
Mitch,
his.
yeah.
Yeah, Mitch is great. I mean, he's also interested in the UFO topic and also in paranormal. I've attended his lectures in person in Los Angeles, um, and also Bill Bankston, who the late Bill Bankston, who passed away last year. Some of his stuff, the healing technique, allegedly also is a manifesting technique. To even prove that is the case, I don't know. So when I bring up the idea that something's feeding off of our negative emotions, I am not saying that is what's going on. That's a theory that interests me. It may be all BS. The manifesting stuff, I've never seen proof. I've had a few experiences where I'm like, maybe it works, but nothing proof wise. So
Yeah.
maybe that's BS too. I don't know. I don't know how you even prove it. But yeah, um, It could be self-fulfilling prophecies. It could be just positive thinking. There's so many possibilities, Andy. I don't want to, people are like, you're not giving enough credit to humanity for messing things up on this planet. And I understand that. So it may just be us. I don't know.
That's all for this episode of That UFO podcast. Thank you so much for listening and watching. If you enjoyed the show, please follow, subscribe, and leave a rating or review wherever you get your podcast. It really helps others find the show. If you're watching on YouTube, hit like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you don't miss future episodes. You can also support the show directly and get early access, ad-free episodes, and bonus content on Patreon, or by subscribing on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or YouTube memberships. All the links are over at thatufopodcast.com or in the show description below, along with merchandise and more. Don't forget you can also pick up a copy of my book, Atlas of Unidentified Flying Objects, available now in all good bookstores and through online retailers, including Amazon. Big thank you again to all of you for listening and tuning in. Until next time, keep looking up. You never know what you might see.
It wasn't a Tic Tac and not quite a saucer, more like a hubcap designed by Chaucer, a little baroque and quite steampunk, like Alice was playing bass for the Parliament of Folk. The little fucker hovered right outside of my window, and when I shoved out the screen, he made it an issue.